Steady is the best strategy to beat everything. What do you think is the difficulty of life? Economic ability? Just too little money? Not meeting your spouse? Divorced? Failure to invest in stocks? Is there a lot of loan debt left because you failed to invest in cryptocurrency or coins? All of the above can be considered failures. However, the biggest failure was to conclude that you had failed, and since then, you have not been able to act. Doing no more is the biggest failure. There was nothing in the mountain at the time. It was a barren land with nothing but wilderness, so there was no water, no trees, not even a single leaf of common grass. It was a place where no life could live. A young man stumbles there and meets a shepherd by chance. The shepherd's grandfather spilled countless acorns on the floor from the bag. And he was picking acorns. What is that grandfather going to do with that acorn? That's what I thought. So I sneaked after the shepherd. What did the grandfather do with acorns? The grandfather dug a hole in the floor with a cane and was planting the acorns one by one. The old man was going to plant acorns and grow them into oak trees. I approached the grandfather and asked him, "Do acorns grow if they are planted in the wilderness?" And he said, "I've planted 200,000 acorns in the last 10 years. And he said, of those, 50,000 acorns. They sprouted. 50% of them were lost because animals were ground, crushed by the wind, and swept away by the rain. There are 25,000 oak trees left like that." So the young man asked again, "Do you do that kind of hard work? I'm going to save this land because the ground is dying because there are no trees." After hearing the answer like that, the young man could not understand the shepherd grandfather and went on a trip again. After a few years, the young man remembered his grandfather's acorn one day. He visited the shepherd's grandfather. There was no shepherd there, and instead there was a huge forest. For decades, the acorns planted by the shepherd's grandfather became oak forests. The 25,000 oak trees that the shepherd had planted were small and insignificant acorns. It's turned into this oak forest. Since then, the young man has visited the shepherd's grandfather's forest every year. Every time he visits, the forest is wider and richer, and now it becomes an environment where people can live. It was forming a village. The last time the young man visited, there was a stream, many villagers, and animals. It turned into a place where birds chirp. Perhaps when the shepherd grandfather first planted the acorn, it was a wilderness with nothing, but he. Knowing that this acorn is going to do such a big thing, that he has the possibility of success in the future. I think there was. 1. The shepherd was very diligent and sincere. Sincerity is the most basic and most difficult thing in life. All efforts must be combined to become sincerity, and many people don't try hard. I think I can do it easily when I hear the word effort, but the effort is harder than I thought, and it has to be consistent. It's not something that anyone can do. It's also something that anyone can do. How many hours a day are you trying? No, how many hours a day can you try? 8 hours? From 9 to 6? This is our regular working hours. Can you try for more than 10 hours? Did the shepherd grandfather work more than 8 hours to plant acorns? Of course not. He planted acorns for 20 to 30 minutes in his spare time or for a short time after lunch. So he planted acorns steadily for more than 10 years. This acorn will be the only tree forest. It's not because I believed that I could smoke even one tree. He wouldn't have had a single doubt in the decade he planted the acorn. The shepherd's grandfather planted acorns for about 2 hours a day. This is what we want to talk about: persistence, integrity. However, acorns planted on the ground continued to gather and eventually created a dense forest. The forest created a village where animals, birds, and people lived together. Do you think this is a miracle? Do you think it's a completely different story from mine? It's not worth that much to the barren wasteland. Do you feel that the shepherd who planted the visible acorns is a greater person than you? Your answer, and my answer, is no. 200,000 acorns were planted and 25,000 oak trees were planted, and the oak trees and forests were dense. Does what you're going to make feel like a big deal? It's a great thing. But that's how it turned out, so it's a big deal. When the shepherd actually planted 200,000 acorns, it wasn't a big deal. It was seen as useless. People even think that whenever a shepherd's grandfather plants acorns, he also scolded and criticized them. That's what they said. What grows if you plant acorns in this barren wasteland like this? Why do you do such a useless thing? Some of the people who asked that question to the shepherd's grandfather were the ones that he planted. I live in a forest made by acorns. Who would have done more useless things? Can you make time in your life to plant 1 or 2 hours of acorns a day? Maybe work, school, family work, childcare, part-time work, and so on. It's very hard to make 2 hours. Nevertheless, if you take 2 hours to do these little things first, how do you think your year 3, year 5, year 10 will be different? Can't you make an oak forest made by an acorn? 2. The shepherd grandfather had faith in his actions. I planted 200,000 acorns, so I didn't think it would be anything. There is a strong belief, strong positivity that if you plant 200,000 acorns, one day it will become a tree. And so they created the law of attraction. Many people think that the law of attraction is simply the doctrine of religion or self-justification. At the heart of the law of attraction is belief in strong positivity. The strong positivity to something I do eventually leads me to do it consistently and diligently. It's about making it possible. Like this shepherd's old man's acorn. Have you ever done something consistently with a 10% or 5% success rate? Isn't 5 to 10% too low a probability that you didn't try it? Most of you probably don't need to challenge the low probability without even starting. He would have made his own excuse. I was like that, too. Belief in what I'm doing grows my mentality, and that's what I'm doing. It's the basis for making sincerity. 3. The shepherd's grandfather is a man of great ability. 95% of people often give up as soon as they fail after trying 3 to 4 times, but if you give it up 3 or 4 times, or a month or 2, you're not really challenging yourself. It's not because you failed, but because you failed, that you've still got the right results. Because it's not a challenge. It's not a failure, it's just a time to test your hypothesis about the challenge you've set. As expected, I can't, can this work? The negative, passive view of this is that eventually, your subconscious says, I take the path of the wrong person. With these little challenges, no failure or success can be known. It just fills your head with negative subconsciousness that you can't do it without properly challenging it. Eventually, this negative subconscious puts the brakes on whatever challenge you have. A person full of this negative subconscious can't achieve anything in the end. Do you want to try it and succeed at once? Is there such a challenge in the world? If there is such a challenge and success, it is either luck or luck. You have a number of important lessons to learn here today. One of them was the shepherd's grandfather, who always did this before planting this acorn. I distinguished good acorns from bad acorns. And I planted good acorns. If the shepherd planted all the acorns, the shepherd would also experience more failures than now. You might have given up planting acorns in the middle. However, shepherds can distinguish between good and bad acorns by planting them. He had his own know-how, and with that know-how, he planted acorns that would grow well with trees. The key is that when you challenge something, it is your own know-how to gain from experiencing failure. Even if you can't get the sweet fruit of success as a reward, if you try it. You will have your own know-how without realizing it, but people are building up that know-how without knowing it, so it's a huge tool of its own. So you don't think it's Titan's tool? I'm going to tell you one strategy that you don't know, but it's going to be successful. That is consistency. Steady is an excellent strategy that has been handed down thousands of years ago. It's stated in the old books and the law of attraction, And it's always said by successful entrepreneurs even now. Have you ever used your energy with an active mindset? Do you have it? If you do something that consistently for a year, you will definitely get different results. Even if it's not necessarily a huge reward of success, you get an ability that you don't know. Is there any reason for you to hesitate so much? I've given you a great strategy to succeed in your life today. Try to do something crazily consistent. I've done it a few times, and I haven't had a good result. Don't take it as a failure, but think of it as a process of growing up. After you've experienced growing pains, you're bound to be an incredibly capable person. Just like I did.